I didn't even have time to scream. One shove, and I was already flying over the side. The water hit like ice and the boat drifted away like nothing had happened. They just watched me thrash, laughing, and tossed me a cheap inflatable ring. We'd been working on that fishing boat together for 2 years. I thought they were my friends. That morning they decided to joke, and that joke could have killed me. When they hauled me out, I didn't shout or accuse. I stood there quiet. But inside something was boiling. A few days later I realized, if they can throw someone overboard that easily, they need to feel what it's like when the ground disappears under them. I started small. The first thing I did was collect what I already had. My phone footage from the deck camera, the bruise on my ribs, the ripped sleeve where my jacket had snagged on a cleat. I replayed the short clip from the moment before the shove over and listened for the laughter. It was filthy and sharp like a pack of dogs celebrating. I saved the file, made 2 backups, and sent one to my email so it wouldn't disappear if my phone did. Next, I talked to the one guy I knew might still have an ounce of decency. Luis, the deckhand who sometimes skipped the after-shift beers. He looked at me like I'd asked him for the moon. "You know how it is, man, they were messing," he muttered. "They didn't mean it." That lie was loud enough to hear. "Didn't mean it?" I asked. "You know how cold that water is in March? You know how a guy can go under in 30 seconds if he takes a breath wrong?" He looked away. "Help me get evidence," I said. "Not for me. For anyone else who gets tossed someday." Luis hesitated, then nodded. That nod mattered. He was my first witness. I needed more than a witness. I needed a pattern. The boat had a dealer account for local seafood restaurants. It ran early, it ran hard, and it ran with a thin crew who liked to test each other. I started asking questions with no heat. "Hey, when was the last time we filed the safety sheets? When did the life ring get replaced?" People shrugged. They were casual about safety because it cost money and nobody loved the Coast Guard knocking on the hatch. What changed everything was when a customer, a small restaurant on the pier, told me they'd received an invoice with missing delivery times, and that once their order was late, the crew had laughed it off. "They cut corners," the owner said. "We pay for on-time, clean deliveries. If they're joking on deck, what are they doing with our orders?" That made it not just personal. It made it professional. The line between a joke and negligence is paperwork, and paperwork is traceable. So I built a file. Dates, times, message threads where someone joked about getting him in, and a photo of the cheap inflatable ring someone had posted like it was a trophy. I interviewed 2 more crew members quietly, offered coffee and a cigarette, and slowly they cooled from nervous to helpful. Fear is contagious, but so is relief when someone finally asks the right question. My plan wasn't revenge in the cinematic sense. I wasn't going to mess with their boat or threaten them. Stupid, illegal moves get headlines and jail time. I wanted their world to shift. Loss of trust, lost contracts, and the kind of exposure that means people stop inviting them into their kitchens. First move, expose the footage where it hurts, to the people who pay them. I edited the clip down to 30 seconds. Shove, splash, laughter, ring. Text overlay, crew throws man overboard. Could have been fatal. Then I added timestamps, names, and the restaurant owner's testimony about late deliveries and sloppy handling. I made it clean, factual, and impossible to ignore. Second move, make the local managers see the cost. I reached out anonymously to 2 of the bigger seafood buyers, the restaurants and a small distributor. I didn't threaten, I offered information. "Watch this. Decide if you want to keep using this crew." They watched. They called the company that subcontracted the crew. The chain reaction was slow at first, then fast. Contracts were put on hold pending an inquiry. Third move, social pressure. I posted the clip on a private community forum for fishermen and seafood buyers with a caption, "If you're trusting these guys with deliveries, watch this." It went quiet for a minute, then the replies poured in, stories about safety violations, booze on deck, and equipment not inspected. People added receipts, times, names. The community smelled blood and wouldn't let it dry. That's when the owner, Mark, noticed. I had no intention of meeting him face to face. He was the kind of man who liked to solve problems with money and intimidation. But he came to the dock anyway in a polo shirt and a face that tried to be calm. "He shouldn't have posted that," he said. "You know how hard it is to keep a crew." "You threw me overboard," I said. Short, clear. No theatrics. He glanced at the people gathered, me, a few workers, a restaurant owner on the phone. His jaw tightened. "It was a joke," he said. He slipped. He'd already started the script. I showed him 2 things, the restaurant owner's email and the clip with timestamps. His face lost heat. "If this goes to the distributors, you know what happens," he said. He meant fines and lost contracts, maybe the end of his business. He wasn't wrong. He offered me money like an apology that could be bought. I told him I wasn't interested. I want safer decks and people fired who do things like that, I said. And I want the buyers to know what they're getting. He laughed low. You think you can break us? We're bigger than you. I left with his laugh in my ears. It was arrogant and thin. After that, things escalated in the way small towns escalate things. Quietly and then publicly. The distributor called. An inspector from the harbor authority showed up. Mark scrubbed his social pages, sent a text to the crew telling them to be careful on their phones. And someone with too much to lose, started a campaign of their own. It was subtle at first. A truck circled my block a few evenings, headlights off, idling. A neighbor called me to say his kids had been told a rumor about me, dangerous and untrue. My phone filled with anonymous calls. Threats are loud in the silence, they try to get under your skin. But the thing with a plan is that fear can be folded into it. I documented every strange call, every suspicious car. I kept copies. Fear becomes evidence when you treat it like data. 2 weeks in, the distributor suspended the crew pending an audit. The news hit the local food blogs. A fisherman allegedly endangering a crew member. Mark hired a lawyer, but lawyers don't rewind videos. They can try to explain them, but the timestamps, the customers, the witnesses, that's harder to smooth. The crew got defensive. Folks who had once laughed at me now avoided my eyes. Some called me names on the dock. One of them, Danny, the one who pushed, started showing up late for shifts, hands shaking, voice clipped. He sent me one message on a burner phone, "You ruined me." I laughed because he didn't know what ruined meant yet. My plan had a second phase, not destruction but deterrence. I arranged for the harbor authority to run surprise safety checks. I connected the distributor with a maritime safety trainer who offered a free half-day course if they wanted to keep their contracts. I wanted systemic change, not just personal ruin. If they took the course and learned, fine. If they didn't, they'd be out of the game. And then, the night I planned to publish the collection of testimonies and the full footage, the bit that would make it national if it leaked, something happened that I hadn't expected. I was at my laptop, fingers hovering over the upload button, when my phone buzzed. A known number. No caller ID. I picked it up. "Don't," said a voice I recognized. It was Mark, but softer. Not the businessman, the frightened man. "Pull it down. We can fix this. Name a price." In the room, the hum of my computer sounded like the sea. I hadn't expected him to call. I hadn't expected him to bargain. "Fix it how?" I asked. "We'll pay you off. We'll make it like it never happened. We'll change crews. You get your apology. You get a check." There it was, the choice I'd imagined a dozen times, the one that splits men. Take the check and let him keep operating under new promises, or press send and risk whatever comes after. My thumb hovered over the screen. Around me, the quiet of the harbor night felt like a held breath. I thought about the cold water in March. I thought about the way they laughed when I flailed. I thought about the people who trusted these guys with their restaurants, their family's dinner, their paychecks. I hit upload. And at that exact second, headlights swept across my window, 2 cars pulling into the lot across the street, engines off, and the shadow of a man stepping out. When I saw those headlights through my window, my first thought was, they found out. I ducked behind the curtain, heart racing like I was still in that freezing water. The trucks stopped out front, 2 of them big, loud like the ones we used on the dock. I could hear doors slam. Boots hitting gravel. I grabbed my phone, checked the video, still uploading. 87%. The progress bar crawled like a dying snake. I didn't know if I had seconds or minutes before they got to me. Then came the knock. Heavy. Confident. The kind of knock that says, "We know you're in there. Open up, man. We just want to talk." Their voices, too casual, too fake, made my blood run cold. I unplugged the hard drive, shoved it into my pocket, and moved toward the back door. They kept knocking louder this time. One of them tried the handle. "Come on, bro, we saw what you posted." I froze. The upload hadn't even finished yet. How the hell did they know? Then I realized, one of the crew must have seen the file name on my laptop. Dockfootage.mp4. Maybe word spread fast on the docks. The back door creaked as I slipped outside. The night smelled like salt and oil. My bike was parked behind the shed, a rusted old Yamaha, loud as hell, but it was my only shot. I started it up, praying it wouldn't stall. The engine roared, echoing down the alley. I gunned it and took off into the dark. In the rearview mirror, I saw them rush out of my house. Flashlights cutting through the night, voices shouting. But I was already gone. I didn't stop until I hit the highway, the ocean on my right, wind slapping my face. My heart was still hammering, but under the fear there was something else: satisfaction. The video had finished uploading before I left. By morning it was everywhere. Fishing crew gone too far. Viral video shows dangerous prank at sea. The comments were brutal. The company was named, faces recognized, sponsors pulling out. And the guy who pushed me, Travis, he was the main star. His smug grin frozen in the thumbnail. At first I felt justice, like the world finally saw what they did. But then things went darker. By the second day, Travis's wife was in the news, crying outside their house. He'd been fired, lost everything. And me, I started getting messages. From strangers. From people I didn't know. Some called me a hero. Some called me worse. Then came the message that made my blood run cold. Hope you're proud of yourself. He's gone. I stared at it for minutes before I could breathe again. Gone. I didn't know if that meant fired or dead. I wanted revenge, yeah. But not like this. I opened my laptop again, scrolling through the comments. Everyone was celebrating. No one cared about the real story. Just drama, views, anger. The internet didn't want truth, it wanted blood. And I had given it to them. The message: hope you're proud of yourself. He's gone. Sat on my screen like a live coal. I read it 10 times, each time feeling smaller. I hadn't wanted anyone hurt. I wanted them to lose their contracts, their excuses, not their lives. I called Luis first. He picked up on the second ring, voice rough like he'd been crying or drinking or both. Man, he said, you gotta see this. He sounded hollow. What happened? I asked. You need to come down to the pier. When I got there, the place was a circus and a crime scene at the same time. Yellow tape sagged from the pilings. A police cruiser idled with lights off, engine purring like a cat. Men clustered in doorways, whispering. Travis's truck was gone. His jacket still hung on the chair inside the bait shop, like a ghost waiting for its owner. Travis left, Luis said. He took his boat and went out before dawn. Nobody saw where he went. His wife says she can't find him. He called in sick this morning and then his phone went straight to voicemail. I felt a cold knot in my stomach. The internet turned stories into shapes that fit people's rage. People had taken the video and added their own commentary, furious threads, calls for violence, threats. I hadn't meant for the mob to chew someone whole. The police asked questions in that flat, polite tone you get when the law feels bureaucratic and exhausted. I answered them honestly. I recorded the shove, I uploaded it, I'd encourage people to complain. I told them I'd hoped that exposure would lead to inspections and contracts canceled, not to missing persons at sea. They took my statement like they took all the other ones, carefully, without judgment. Over the next 48 hours, the story mutated. Local news ran breathless updates. One live segment replayed the shove frame by frame, commentators speculating on intent, on legal culpability. The Fishermen's Union demanded an investigation into crew conduct and safety. The distributor that had paused contracts announced they were opening an internal review. And through it all, there was a new thread of fear. Travis had left. Folks whispered that he'd taken off on a small boat with cheap life jackets and an engine that had seen better years. Some said he'd go sleep it off at a friend's. Others said the worst. The town held its breath. I tried to sleep and couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw how he'd grinned the moment before the shove, that stupid, triumphant look. Did he deserve to lose his job? Absolutely. Did that justify a man vanishing into the gray horizon? Not to me. On the third morning there was a break, a call from the harbor master. He's been found, she said, and I heard relief like a leak in her voice. My relief folded into something stranger. They'd found him on a small barge 2 miles out, passed out from drinking. His phone was dead, his boat low on fuel, but he was alive. The EMTs bundled him into a blanket and the news vans followed like sharks. When he finally stood in front of the cameras, pale and blinking, the anger that had roared through the town split into a dozen quieter human things. His wife spoke into a microphone and cried. "We don't need this," she said. "He's not a monster. He made a mistake." The crew who had laughed at my chest moments before clustered around their friend like a pack. People called him names, then called for compassion. It was messy and raw. I watched it all from a distance. The TV was a mirror reflecting every unwanted consequence of what I'd done. In court, Travis would face civil claims. His boss would be sued, fined, shamed. But the town also started asking better questions about safety, about who was allowed to laugh off risk. There was a legal fallout that I'd predicted and some I hadn't. The distributor did sue the subcontracting company, and the harbor authority revoked a few licenses until new safety protocols were in place. Travis was charged with reckless endangerment and lost his certification. Mark, the owner, was fined and his company placed under new oversight by the state. Contracts weren't just paused, they were redistributed to crews with cleaner records. The industry shifted slowly toward accountability. What I hadn't predicted was how much it would cost me. Friends who'd once bought me a beer stopped returning calls. Some said I'd gone too far, that I'd weaponized community outrage. Others said I'd saved lives. The town divided itself into camps: the good who believed exposure was necessary, and the too much who thought the punishment far outstripped the crime. A week after Travis was found, I ran into his wife in the grocery store. She looked at me with eyes hollowed out by fear. I wanted to apologize. I opened my mouth and closed it. Words felt useless, like band-aids for a broken ankle. "We only wanted him to stop being careless," she said. "We didn't want him to be gone for a day." Her voice wobbled. People told him they hoped he'd drown. There it was. The ugly byproduct of viral justice. People who wanted an eye for an eye, not a system that changed. That's the line I had to live with now. A small court ordered an injunction. I had to hand over raw footage to a neutral investigator. It felt invasive, but I complied. They needed full context. Who else posted, what edits had been made, if anything had been doctored. The tribunal wanted to understand if anyone had incited violence. I hadn't, not in words, but the internet is an amplifier that doesn't ask for clarity. On the day of the hearing, I walked into the courthouse and watched men who had been laughing on my deck stand there with their shoulders hunched. Some avoided my eyes, others glared. Travis sat in the defendant row, dark circles under his eyes but human in a way the thumbnail never showed. He looked at me for a moment, and in that moment I glimpsed something like recognition. Not of my role, maybe, but of the fact that our lives were now tangled. The judge's ruling was complicated. Fines for Mark's company, mandated safety training, probation for Travis, and compensation for anyone directly harmed. The court called for community education about workplace safety on boats and set up a fund to help displaced workers transition. It felt like a compromise no one loved, but it moved toward fixing what had been broken. After the trial, walking out into the sharp salt air, a man I barely knew, a restaurant owner who testified, clapped me on the shoulder. "You did the right thing," he said. "But man, I don't envy the road." I nodded because that was the truth. Sometimes right is complicated and costly. Weeks turned into months. The docks adjusted. New crews came in, some trained, some not. The shout lines calmed. The life ring on our boat got replaced with a government-certified buoy that had the company's name stamped on it. The dock bulletin board listed safety workshops. People were kinder in small ways, holding a ladder, tying a knot carefully, checking a life jacket twice. And me? I kept recording, but more carefully. I learned the difference between exposing harm and amplifying hatred. I learned that public accountability means thinking through consequences. I also learned that some people would never forgive. Vinegar doesn't sweeten just because you add sugar. One evening months later, I ran into Travis at the bait shop. He looked thinner, quieter. He didn't lunge or curse. He nodded like an apology without sound. "You okay?" I asked. He shrugged. "I'm alive. That's something." He met my eyes. "I'm sorry how it went down. I shouldn't have pushed you. I was being stupid." "I get that," I said. "I get that people do stupid things. I only wanted people to be safe." He laughed a little, a dry sound. "Funny. We both wanted the same thing in the end." The conversation was short and awkward, then we went our separate ways. No forgiveness was given grandly on camera. No triumphant music played. It was messy and human, an ending I'd been hoping for, if not exactly deserved. When I think about that shove, I still feel the cold slap of the water. I still feel the anger that turned into a plan. But I also feel the weight of what exposure can do. Fix things, yes, but also cut deep in ways you can't predict. In the end, the docks were safer. The crew that laughed no longer worked those runs. People who trusted their deliveries slept easier. And me, I paid a price in friendships and in a certain naive belief that justice is clean. Revenge had worked in the narrow sense. The company changed. The industry noticed. But I learned that making people pay doesn't always heal the person who was hurt. Sometimes it just remakes the town, and you live in the new map, remembering which roads you helped redraw. I don't miss the old complacency. I don't miss the nights I woke up with my heart in my throat. I also don't miss the simple story of them versus me. Life kept moving like tides. Sometimes you push back, sometimes you get pushed, and sometimes you end up steering the boat. I still go out sometimes, not as often as before. The sea feels different now, sharper, truer. And when I look at the water, I think less about payback and more about what it takes to keep people afloat.